The rain poured heavily, soaking the streets and driving most people to rush past without a second glance. At the edge of a lonely bus stop, a young woman sat hunched over, her clothes damp and her hands tightly gripping an old, worn backpack as though it were the last piece of her life she could still hold on to. Her body trembled with exhaustion, and her eyes carried the weight of sleepless nights and endless struggle. The world around her moved quickly, but she sat frozen, too weak to stand, too lost to call for help. Through the curtain of rain came a man, his arms full with grocery bags, his mind set on getting home to his little daughter who waited with a smile and a hungry stomach. He wasn't a man of luxury, his worn jacket and tired eyes told the story of long hours and unending responsibility. Yet, as he passed the bus stop, he caught the faintest sound, a broken whisper, a plea so fragile it could have been lost in the storm. He turned his head and saw her. Most would have hurried on, convincing themselves it wasn't their problem. But he couldn't. Something in her trembling hands and downcast face reminded him of nights he, too, had felt abandoned by the world. His heart tightened, and without thinking of his own burdens, he stepped toward her. He didn't see a stranger, he saw a human being in pain. And in that moment, he chose compassion over convenience. He set his grocery bags down on the damp ground, kneeling beside her as the rain continued to fall. The woman tried to steady herself, mumbling that she was fine, but her pale face and shaking hands betrayed the truth. Without hesitation, he offered her his umbrella, shielding her from the downpour. "Here," he said gently, "you look like you need this more than me." She looked up at him, surprised that anyone had even noticed her, much less stopped. Her voice cracked as she explained that she had been searching for work for weeks, that her money had run out, and that the backpack she clutched was all she had left. She confessed she hadn't eaten since the morning before. As she spoke, her words spilled out not just as facts, but as fragments of broken hope. He listened, really listened, the way few people ever had. His own life was far from easy. Raising a young daughter alone after losing his wife had left him stretched thin, balancing bills and long shifts just to keep their tiny apartment. But in her voice, he heard the same desperation he had once felt, the kind that leaves you standing on the edge of giving up. Without a second thought, he pulled a sandwich from one of his grocery bags and placed it in her trembling hands. She hesitated, tears mixing with the rain, before taking a small bite. It wasn't much, but in that moment, it felt like the first sign that maybe she wasn't invisible after all. That night, as the rain grew heavier, he noticed her struggling to stay awake at the bus stop bench. She insisted she would be fine, but he could see the truth, she had nowhere to go. He thought about his daughter waiting at home, about the extra blanket folded neatly on the couch, and about the fear in this woman's eyes. After a long pause, he finally said, "Listen, my place isn't much, but it's dry and warm. Just for tonight." She hesitated, clutching her backpack as if it were her only shield in the world. Trust didn't come easily to her anymore. But when she looked into his face, she saw no judgment, no pity, only sincerity. Slowly, she nodded. When they arrived, his little daughter ran to the door, barefoot and smiling, thrilled to see her father home. Her eyes widened when she noticed the guest, but instead of shying away, the girl picked up her favorite stuffed bunny and offered it to the woman without a word. That simple act of pure innocence broke something inside her. The woman sank to her knees, hugging the toy tightly as tears spilled down her cheeks. For years, she had been unseen, unwanted, drifting from one disappointment to another. And here, in the small, modest home of a man who had little to spare, she felt something she hadn't felt in so long, belonging. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Why are you being so kind?" He smiled gently and replied, "Because once, someone did the same for me." Days turned into weeks, and what was meant to be just one night stretched into something more. She found herself waking each morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of his daughter's laughter, a rhythm of life she thought she'd lost forever. At first, she offered to leave each day, not wanting to be a burden, but he never let her go hungry, never let her believe she was an inconvenience. Instead, He encouraged her to try again, to apply for jobs, to believe she was capable of starting over. When rejection letters came, she broke down, ready to quit. The weight of her past failures pressed hard on her chest, but he sat beside her at the small kitchen table and said, "You've survived worse than this. Don't let today decide who you are." His words carried the conviction of someone who knew pain intimately, someone who had walked through loss yet chose to keep going. Little by little, she began to believe him. He helped her practice for interviews, watched his daughter while she searched for work, and reminded her that every step forward, no matter how small, was a victory. He gave her strength on the days she had none. One evening, as she watched him gently braid his daughter's hair before bed, the truth hit her harder than any storm ever had. This man, with so little to spare, had given her more hope, more dignity, and more love than anyone else in her entire life. And he had done it without expecting a single thing in return. One quiet evening, after dinner, they all sat together in the small living room, the father on the worn couch, his daughter curled up against him, and the woman sitting nearby, still holding the stuffed bunny she had been given weeks ago. The room was simple, but it radiated warmth. She looked at them, her eyes brimming with emotion, realizing how much her life had changed since that rainy night at the bus stop. Her hands trembled as she finally spoke, her voice breaking with gratitude. "When I was lost, all I asked for was a hand, but you," she paused, glancing at him, "you gave me your whole life." He shifted uncomfortably, never one to see his actions as anything extraordinary. "I just did what anyone should do," he said softly. But his daughter, in her innocent wisdom, hugged the woman tightly and whispered, "You're family now." The words pierced her heart in the most beautiful way. For years, she had wandered with nothing, no stability, no kindness, no place to belong. Yet here, in this little home, with a man who understood struggle and a child who knew only how to love, she had found what she thought she'd lost forever: hope. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but this time they weren't born of despair, they were born of healing. She realized that true kindness isn't about what you have, but what you're willing to give. And sometimes, in giving, you don't just save someone else, you save yourself too.